Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I'm back with a special video. For this video, I'm going to give you my look at my top 10 Nintendo Switch games of 2021. Plus, I want to give you my thoughts on the movie The Batman, which I just saw. Which, although this video will come up on Tuesday, I saw it on Saturday and just came back from the theaters though. But before we get started on the top 10, though, I do want to go run through what I like to call the honorable mentions ones, games that didn't really maybe didn't make it into the top 10, but are still good games to try out nevertheless, especially if the Nintendo Switch is your main system of choice or anything like that. So for the honorable mention, though, I do want to start off first with Double Dragon Neo. Although this game has been ported over to multiple systems, though, it was nice to see it come to the Nintendo Switch, and I thought WayForward did a great job with the game. It definitely had a bit of that 80s style to it and everything, and it was a fun beat 'em up. Even though the visuals are, in a 3D style, may not look as good as WayForward's other 2D games, but still an enjoyable game nevertheless. The next one under the honorable mention is the Voice of Cards, the Island Dragon Roar, though. This one was kind of fun and very interesting to play, especially coming from the same developers who did the Nier series, to be exact, though. It definitely had that style and mood to it, though. Plus, the RPG mechanics I thought were simple and fun and enjoyable, nevertheless, and I thought the story was very interesting. It's definitely one to keep an eye out on, though, or at least have if you haven't tried it out yet. And I think a sequel is already out, available right now to download. The next one on the list is Neo: The World Ends With You. This is a sequel, I think, for a lot of fans who enjoyed The World's End With You when it was originally released back on the Nintendo DS, was waiting for a long time. And this one game definitely didn't disappoint, though. Even though the game went into a 3D rather than the 2D style or anything like that, it was still a fun game with some of the power-ups and some of the style of the game, which kind of gave off a little bit of a Jet Set Radio vibe to it to a certain degree. It's definitely a sleeper hit in my opinion. It's worth taking a look at, though. The next one is Ghouls and Goblin Resurrection, though. It was kind of surprising to see Capcom basically bring the Ghouls and Goblins series back, though, and it was certainly nice to see it make a comeback indeed, though. It first appeared on the Switch before appearing on other systems, to be exact, though. It ran on the RE engine, though, which was pretty amazing to see the game run on the RE engine, though, and the game maintains that difficulty that the Ghouls and Goblins series has been known about. Some of it is in terms of controlling Arthur, which can sometimes be a pain in the ass at times, though, but it is still an enjoyable game, especially for those who are looking for something challenging, to be exact, though. So Ghouls and Goblins Resurrection is definitely a fun one to look at, though. And last but not least, though, is Persona 5 Striker, the one I just recently reviewed, though. Even though we didn't get Persona 5 or the Persona 5 Royal on the Nintendo Switch, though, we did get somewhat of a sequel, which is still an odd choice for Aulx and Sega to make, though. But nevertheless, the game is still enjoyable indeed, and while it is developed by the same folks who did the Warriors games, though, I feel as though this one seems to be more towards... It feels like this game feels more closer to what another Omega Force and Koei Tecmo game did, and that was Crimson Sea 2 back during the PS2 era. So it's worth taking a look at, though. Again, still an odd choice. We didn't get Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal and all, so it's still an odd choice, but still a good game nevertheless, though. Okay, we're going to get started with our top 10, and we're going to be doing the part 1, though, which will be from 10 to 5, though, and if you're curious, and each of these games I mentioned, though, there will be links in the description of my review of those games, so if you want to take a look at those, you could go ahead and do that, though. We'll start off with the first one is No More Heroes 3 at number 10, though. This, for a lot of Suda51 fans, though, this was a game a lot of folks have been waiting for quite some time, and it doesn't disappoint to a certain degree, though. The combat is still as enjoyable for those who like those hack and slash style of the game, and it still maintains that Suda51 style that the game, that Suda51 is well known for, though. I mean, there are some technical issues here and there. Most of it comes into sort of the open world side of the things, though. But as far as the combat, or when in the closed area, the game runs fine, at least based on my time with it, and it is still a good game, especially for those who were waiting for a entry into the No More Heroes series for quite some time. So No More Heroes 3 makes it at number 10. Number 9 is Kingdom of Amalur: Re-Reckoning, though. This was an interesting game that went through a very troublesome history when it originally released back on the PS3 and the 360, though, with the whole idea with former baseball player Curt Schillings and Rhode Island and all that stuff. So it was nice when THQ ported the game over to the Xbox One and the PS4, and what was also surprising was to see the game make its way over to the Nintendo Switch. Now, granted, though, the game runs at 30 frames per second compared to how the PS4 and Xbox One version does, but it still maintains a lot of the gameplay mechanics that the other versions have, nevertheless, though. And it is still a good game, though. If you haven't tried it out, though, especially for those who are into games like, Skyrim or Dragon Dogma or even Breath of the Wild to a certain degree. So Kingdom of Amalur: Re-Reckoning is at number 9. Number 8 is the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. Now, I'm basing this off of the one I got from Play Asia, though. It was certainly nice to see Koei Tecmo bring over the 3 Ninja Gaiden games, Ninja Gaiden 1, 2, and 3, though. 1 and 2 were based off of Ninja Gaiden Stigma, while Ninja Gaiden 3 was based off of Razor Edge, which was an enhanced version of Ninja Gaiden 3. The games are still fun and enjoyable, though. The Switch version ran fine for me, though. Ninja Gaiden Sigma ran fine. Ninja Gaiden 2 also ran fine, but there were some slowdowns here and there. Same with Ninja Gaiden 3, though. But either way, still a fun game, nevertheless, though. I would recommend going with the physical version, and if you decide to go with the physical version, it is available on Play Asia, though. Number 7 is Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. It sort of was a long time to see another entry in the Crash Bandicoot series, and no one knew if that was going to happen, especially with Activision Blizzard focusing, before being purchased by Microsoft, focusing on Call of Duty. But in either case, we did get another Crash Bandicoot game, and the Switch version came out a year later after the PS4 version, and the game is still enjoyable, even if it follows maybe too closely to the original first 3 Jak and Daxter game, though. Nevertheless, though, it is a fun platforming game, especially for those who are into those type of into platforming. Nevertheless, though, I'm hopeful now that Microsoft owns Activision Blizzard that we might get a Crash Bandicoot 5 if that ever happens, though. Number 6 is Monster Hunter Stories Wings of Ruins. We basically got 2 Monster Hunter games for the Nintendo Switch in 2021. Monster Hunter Rise, which is a good game, but I haven't really got into it as much, mostly because I've been busy. And Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruins, a sequel to the original 3DS release, though, which is more closer to a traditional RPG. And in some ways, it's kind of somewhat similar to, say, Pokemon to a certain extent, though, where you basically try to find monsters, you raise them, and you can use them in combat and everything like that. And I like the whole style to the game, though. I like the whole somewhat of a Samoa look to the game in particular, though. So it's a really neat RPG, to be exact, especially for those who might be turned off to the traditional Monster Hunters games, though. Nevertheless, number 6 is Monster Hunter Rise Rings of Ruin. And at number 5, though, is Bravely Default 2. Basically the sequel to the first one, and somewhat of the sequel, Bravely Second, that were both released on the Nintendo 3DS, though. Bravely Default 2 is like Octopath Traveler to a certain degree, a throwback to the old school JRPGs to a certain extent, though. You have the ability to block, which adds some Bravely points, which makes it easier to use basically different spells, or attacks at like 1 turn to be exact though. The combat is enjoyable and the visuals definitely look nice, especially running at the Unreal Engine 4 though. It may not have the same kind of style that the Octopath Traveler has, but nevertheless it still looks good in its own right though. And if you're looking for a somewhat more of a game that's kind of like an old school JRPG, then Bravely Default 2 is definitely worth taking a look at. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which will be to 4, 2, 1. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with my part 2 of my top 10 Nintendo Switch games of 2021. So now we're going to get to part 2, which is basically 4 to 1. So we'll get started with number 4, and that is Shin Megami Tensei 5 for the Nintendo Switch. I believe it's just recently came out on PC though. Now, this was a game that was, in a way, kind of in development hell for quite some time though. It was basically first announced when the Nintendo Switch was recently was announced though, and since then we haven't heard any we heard updates here and there, but many people thought the game would get canceled or anything like that. Well, it didn't, and when it came out in 2021 though, the game did very well for well, let's just say it did very well in terms of sales wise though. The game follows the kind of approach similar to you see in other Aulx's RPGs to be exact. You basically not only gather demons though, you can fuse them and create new demons though, and the combat is definitely enjoyable, even though the game I feel like focuses more on using your MPs more than just your regular attacks and all, but it is still an enjoyable game, especially for those who like other entries in the Shin Megami Tensei 5 series though. So I put it at number 4. Number 3 on this list goes to Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, though. It was kind of interesting to see Nintendo port this game over to the Nintendo Switch, though, because for me, Super Mario 3D World was sort of like, in my opinion, I viewed it as sort of like the black sheep of the 3D Mario games, along with Mario Sunshine, though. Still a good game, but I never feel like it was as good as, say, Mario Galaxy 1 or 2, or, of course, Super Mario Odyssey, released back in 2017. Nevertheless, though, it was still an enjoyable game, even if it comes off to some as more like an enhanced version of the Super Mario 3D Land, though. But Bowser's Fury, that was a part of this Super Mario 3D World, was sort of a fun and very interesting way of giving you an idea what maybe the future of Mario games might be. This one was more of an open world kind of an approach, to be exact. It was sort of interesting how they approach it though, ranging from basically, selecting different power-ups, that you can use and all, but of course having to deal with the Bowser in the distance, to be exact, and you have to sort of find a bell or try to hide out until he basically tires himself out and all that stuff. But the idea of it going into an open world is kind of interesting though. It's sort of like a little mini open world though, but not really a huge one in the level as say Breath of the Wild might be though. So, and it certainly would be interesting to see if this is sort of the direction that future 3D Mario games might end up. But either way, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is at number 3. Number 2 is The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, though. It was sort of interesting that Nintendo would announce and bring a port of the 2011 Wii title over to the Nintendo Switch. I always thought they would bring over Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and they probably could, though, but still, it was sort of nice that they brought it over, and it got a chance for audience who may have skipped out on it when it originally came out though. Playing it on the Pro Controller has its ups and downs though. Attacking, you have to use the right analog stick though, but it did at least make some improved in some areas, such as controlling your Skyloaf and all that stuff though. But and not to mention, it ran at 1080p 60 frames per second, so that certainly was a plus indeed though. So it was certainly nice that they ported this game over though, and I certainly would make it at number 2 on my top 10 Nintendo Switch games for 2021. Would like to see Wind Waker and Twilight Princess make its way over to the Nintendo Switch. And finally, my number 1 game on the Nintendo Switch is Metroid Dread. I think for a lot of Metroid fans, this was sort of a long time coming, waiting to see if if a brand new Metroid game would ever happen, though. And while we know Metroid 4 is coming, we know how that game restarted development, and who knows when that game will come out. I'm hopeful we'll hear something this year, though, but time will ultimately tell if that happens. But in the meantime, we were kind of surprised during E3 2021 when it was revealed that Metroid Dread was happening. The long-rumored game, the sequel to 2002's Metroid Fusion, though. And it turned out to be a fun, but even sometimes frustrating game, especially when you have to deal with those Emmys, to be exact. Those robots that are confined to a certain area, though. But it also followed the tired and true formula in terms of, some areas cannot be open until you get a certain power-up and all, and dealing with certain enemies, to be exact, though. The game was developed by Mercury System that did Metroid Samus Return on the Nintendo 3DS, and some of those elements were incorporated into Metroid Dread. Combined with it running at 60 frames per second, it was definitely a fun 2D experience, though, and I do hope this opens the door for more Metroid games to come to the Nintendo Switch, even if it goes a different direction, though. So for me, Metroid Dread is my number one Nintendo Switch game of 2021, though. Okay, before I end this video, I want to give my thoughts on the Batman that I saw in theaters, though, and I have to say, though, seeing this one being directed by Matt Reeves, I honestly have to say this one is probably as good as Christopher Nolan's 2008 The Dark Knight, though. I like the style and the approach that director Matt Reeves took this, though. It kind of feels almost like somewhat of a combination of Nolan's style of, of how he did with the movie with the Batman, to a little bit of some of the Tim Burton style to it to a certain degree. And I have to say, Rob Patterson, if I'm saying his name correctly, did a really good job playing a different kind of Bruce Wayne and all that stuff. Maybe somewhat different than what Michael Keaton or Christian Bale did in terms of their portrayal of Batman, but still a very good one, though. Colin Farrell doing the Joker is really good. I thought he did a good job with it, and I especially liked the Riddler. They really changed him up. He's not like the comedic type like he was in Batman Forever, though. This is more of a psychopath killer, a disturbing individual, and I thought they did a really good job with that movie, though. And the whole, you definitely felt like this movie, though, was more in towards of like the detective side. There was some action sequence here and there, but I think the main focus was more on the detective side of Batman, though. If there's one complaint I will have to say about the Batman, is that there's one scene where Batman is flying down the building from the top of the Gotham PD, though. It sort of felt a little to me, it looked a little cheesy, though, compared to how it was done in, say, Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, though. So that was probably my one downside of it, but otherwise the movie was really well done, and it's worth taking a look at, though. I'm a little disappointed it's not part of the DC Cinematic Universe, though. It's one of my issues I have with how DC has handled their movies, though. I do think that it's sort of like, I still feel like it would have been great to have it part of the DC Cinematic Universe. But either way, it was a good movie, though. I would be open to seeing a sequel if it happens. I do feel like there's a good chance they could do a sequel, though. I'm curious to see if they'll bring in like other villains, like maybe say absurd ones like Calendar Man, or even like someone like Hugo Strange. I think that's someone that's long overdue to be in the Batman film. I think it would be a great adversary towards Batman, to be exact, though. And like I said, I thought Rob Patterson did a really good job playing Bruce Wayne, though. So I'm very curious to see what direction they would take it if a sequel does happen, though. One thing to point out about the Batman is that it is 3 hours long, so I strongly advise you, plan your day ahead if you decide to go see this movie. But overall, I enjoyed the Batman. Okay, this concludes my top 10 Nintendo Switch games of 2021. And again, These are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts on my top 10 Nintendo Switch games of 2021? Do you agree with my top 10? Do you disagree? Do you have a different view? Do you think there are some games I should have added on there? Do you think there's some games I should have taken off though? What about the ones I mentioned as honorable mentions? Do you agree with those? Do you disagree? And what are your thoughts about the Batman? Did you see it over the weekend? Did you think it was as good as Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's worse? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!